If you're out there building programs for communities, you know it's tough, right? Good intentions just don't cut it. So the big question is, how do you go from meaning well to actually doing good in a way that sticks? Well, today, we're going to break down an amazing toolkit designed for exactly that, building resilient, human-centered systems that make a real difference.
And this quote right here, it gets right to the heart of a trap so many organizations fall into. We look at a problem and think, oh, this is a training issue. Let's just run another workshop. But what if the problem isn't a lack of knowledge? What if it's the very foundation of the organization itself? That's what we're here to explore.
So, to tackle this, we're going to think like an architect. Makes sense, right? We're going to follow a clear blueprint, taking it step by step, from surveying the land all the way to drawing up the final plans. By the end of this, you'll have a solid framework for building programs that are truly built to last.
Our blueprint is pretty straightforward. It's got 4 main parts. First, we're going to start with a really honest assessment. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how people actually change. After that, we'll talk about the architecture of programs themselves. And finally, we'll put it all together into your complete design blueprint.
All right, first up, the honest assessment. You know, just like an architect, you can't start building without knowing the lay of the land. And for us, that means taking a hard, honest look at your own organization, the community you serve, and all your stakeholders. Anything less, and you're just building on shaky ground. So this survey work, it really breaks down into 3 key areas. First, you have to ask, is our organization actually ready for this kind of deep change? Second, do we really understand the context of the community we're working in? And third, how are we going to get everyone, from leadership down to our funders, truly on board?
And these right here. These are the red flags. These are the cracks in the foundation. If you're seeing constant staff burnout or caseloads so huge that real human connection is impossible, listen, those aren't just minor hiccups. They are deep structural failures, and they will undermine any program you try to build, no matter how good it is. These are the things you have to fix first, period.
You know, what's so fascinating is how much your language reveals about your organization's core mindset. Just think about it. Are your intake forms basically just pathology inventories, listing out everything that's wrong? Or do they actually look for assets, for potential, for what's already working? This isn't just about being politically correct. It completely shapes the relationship from the moment someone walks through your door. Okay, so we've surveyed the land, we know what we're working with. Now for part 2 of our blueprint, understanding the materials. And in our line of work, the materials are people. To build something effective, we have to understand the actual physics of how human beings change.
So many programs are built on what's called the transmission model, where we basically just dump a bunch of information onto people and cross our fingers that it sticks. But this toolkit argues for something much more powerful, transformative learning. This isn't about giving people more facts. It's about creating experiences that fundamentally change how they see themselves and their world. It's a total game changer.
So what kicks off that kind of transformation? Often, it starts with something called a disorienting dilemma. This is one of those moments that just completely shatters your current worldview. It forces you to stop and ask, wait a minute, what if I've been looking at this all wrong? It's in that moment of, let's call it productive discomfort, that the door to real, lasting learning just swings wide open.
And you absolutely cannot get to that deep, transformative learning without following this exact sequence. This is so important. You have to build relationships and create safety first before you can ever expect real engagement and learning to happen. For people who've experienced trauma, trying to jump straight to the content, it doesn't work.
Okay, we've surveyed the land and we get our materials, the people. Now it's time for part 3 of the blueprint, actually drawing the plans. This is where we get super practical and design the routines, the boundaries, the processes, basically the entire architecture of our program.
This is such a critical aha moment for so many of us. There's this huge misconception that being trauma responsive means having no rules, no structure, just letting things flow. But the reality is the exact opposite. Predictability creates safety. When people know what to expect, their nervous system can finally relax enough to actually engage and learn. Chaos is the enemy of healing.
So, what happens when we need to maintain that structure? When things go wrong? Well, this slide makes the difference crystal clear. A punitive response is all about punishment. You messed up, so here's your consequence. But a restorative response, it focuses on repair. The question becomes, how can we fix the harm that was done? It holds people accountable, for sure, but it does it without stripping them of their dignity.
And that really is the main takeaway here. Structure isn't about being rigid or controlling. The right kind of structure,
one that's predictable, clear, and restorative, is the very thing that makes healing and transformation possible. It's the architecture for change.
All right, let's pull all these pieces together. We've laid out all the essential components, so now it's time to assemble your final blueprint for building better programs. So here it is, your 3-part blueprint. Simple, but powerful. It starts with surveying the land. That means an honest assessment. Then you understand the materials by designing for true transformation, not just dumping information. And finally, you draw the plans by building intentional, restorative structures. You can't skip a single step. They all work together.
We're going to leave you with this really powerful question, because this isn't just a thought exercise, right? The real work starts when you look in the mirror at your own organization and you ask, where's the gap between what we say we believe and what our day-to-day practices actually do? Answering that question, honestly, that's the first real step to building something truly better.